Tensions in the Middle East are escalating as the United States continues its military campaign against Iran, while President Donald Trump signals both confidence in victory and uncertainty about when the conflict will end. Speaking amid intensifying operations, President Trump said the United States has already achieved major successes against Iranian military capabilities, but insists the mission will continue until what he calls a decisive victory is secured. The president described the campaign as a limited operation intended to eliminate threats posed by Iran, yet his remarks also made clear that the conflict will not end until Iranian forces are fully neutralized. According to Trump, key elements of Iran's military leadership have already been eliminated and major portions of its naval and air forces have been severely damaged. He argued that Iran's ability to retaliate has been dramatically reduced, though he stopped short of setting a clear timeline for the end of hostilities. While suggesting the operation may conclude relatively soon, he emphasized that the United States will continue military pressure until it determines that Iran no longer poses a strategic threat to American interests or to its regional allies. The war has already triggered significant military activity across the region. US and Israeli forces have launched a series of strikes on Iranian military infrastructure, including naval assets and facilities linked to weapons development. One reported attack targeted an Iranian naval vessel operating near the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical maritime routes for energy supplies. The strategic importance of the Strait of Hormuz has become increasingly evident during the conflict. Roughly a fifth of the world's oil and gas shipments normally pass through the narrow waterway. However, satellite tracking data now indicates that many tankers have halted their movements, with numerous vessels anchored and waiting as the security situation deteriorates. The disruption has sent shockwaves through global energy markets. Oil prices surged dramatically during the early hours of trading, briefly climbing above $100 per barrel and reaching as high as $119 at one point. This marked one of the most volatile trading days in oil markets in years. Later in the day, prices retreated sharply after President Trump suggested the conflict might be nearing completion. By the close of trading, oil had fallen back to around $85 to $90 per barrel. Despite the drop, the sudden spike highlighted how quickly geopolitical tensions can ripple through global financial systems. The economic consequences are already being felt worldwide. Analysts warn that rising energy costs could push inflation higher across multiple sectors. Higher oil prices typically increase the cost of transportation, manufacturing, and agriculture, ultimately raising prices for consumers. Officials in several major economies are closely monitoring the situation. Finance ministers from the G7 group of industrialized nations held emergency discussions to assess the potential economic fallout from the conflict. Governments fear that prolonged instability in the Middle East could trigger another wave of inflation, similar to the economic shocks seen during the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. Rising fuel prices are already affecting households. In several countries, motorists have reported noticeable increases in petrol and diesel prices within days of the conflict's escalation. Experts warn that if energy supplies remain disrupted, those increases could accelerate in the coming weeks. Beyond energy markets, the war is also influencing the price of other essential commodities. Global data shows significant increases in materials such as steel, jet fuel, natural gas, aluminium, wheat, and fertilizer ingredients. These commodities play key roles in industries ranging from construction and aviation to agriculture and food production. As a result, economists warn that the conflict could contribute to broader global inflation, raising the cost of living for millions of people. Meanwhile, military tensions across the region continue to expand. British defense officials confirmed that Royal Air Force Typhoon fighter jets have been deployed to intercept drones linked to the conflict. 2 drones heading toward Jordan and Bahrain were reportedly shot down during defensive operations. The United Kingdom has also announced plans to deploy the naval destroyer HMS Dragon to the eastern Mediterranean. The warship will head towards Cyprus, where a British military base was previously targeted by an Iranian drone attack. Within Iran itself, the political situation remains volatile. Following the assassination of the country's previous supreme leader earlier in the conflict, his son has assumed the position of national leadership. Thousands of supporters gathered in Tehran and other cities to demonstrate loyalty to the new leader, whose sudden rise to power has reshaped the country's political landscape. The new leadership faces enormous pressure as the war continues. Iranian officials say the country will resist foreign military pressure and defend its sovereignty. Government representatives argue that Iran had been engaged in diplomatic negotiations before the conflict began and now has little choice but to respond militarily. However, public opinion within Iran appears divided. Some citizens have expressed anger toward the government, blaming years of political repression and economic hardship for weakening the country. Others fear that continued fighting will lead to further destruction and civilian casualties. The humanitarian toll of the conflict is already becoming clearer. One of the deadliest incidents occurred during the early days of the war in the southern Iranian city of Manab. A missile strike hit a military facility located near a primary school, resulting in catastrophic damage. Newly verified footage suggests the missile that struck the military base was a US-made Tomahawk cruise missile. Experts analyzing the video and satellite imagery believe the strike formed part of a broader wave of coordinated attacks on Iranian military targets in the area. Iranian authorities say the nearby school was also severely damaged during the attack, and at least 168 people were killed. The incident remains under investigation as analysts continue to examine the evidence. The strike has sparked international concern over civilian casualties and the broader humanitarian consequences of the war. At the same time, fighting has spread beyond Iran's borders. In southern Lebanon, Israeli airstrikes have targeted areas believed to be connected to Hezbollah, the Iranian-backed militant group. Residents in affected villages report that strikes have hit populated areas, increasing fears that the conflict could widen into a broader regional war. Missile activity has also created tensions with neighboring countries. Debris from intercepted Iranian missiles has fallen inside Turkish territory on multiple occasions after NATO air defenses destroyed incoming projectiles. Turkey, a NATO member that borders Iran, is now closely monitoring the situation as regional security risks intensify. For now, the United States maintains that its campaign is focused on weakening Iran's military capabilities and eliminating what it describes as hostile leadership structures. President Trump continues to insist that the operation has already achieved significant success. However, despite describing the campaign as nearing completion, he has acknowledged that the fighting is unlikely to end immediately. The uncertainty surrounding the conflict's duration is contributing to global anxiety. Governments, financial markets, and ordinary citizens alike are watching closely as one of the world's most strategically important regions remains at the center of a rapidly evolving crisis. As the war continues, the stakes extend far beyond the battlefield. The conflict is shaping global energy markets, testing international alliances, and raising fears of wider instability across the Middle East. Whether the situation moves toward a rapid conclusion or expands into a longer confrontation may depend on decisions made in the coming days by leaders in Washington, Tehran, and other capitals across the region. For now, the world remains on edge, waiting to see how the next phase of this volatile conflict unfolds.